Maybe
Yeah,
you can share.
I'll talk a
Yeah,
little
maybe
bit
you
about
can.
it. Yeah, because
Yeah,
that
maybe
was
you can. Sorry. Hi, I'm your host, Mick Spikey, here on Canvases and Queens. Two artists exploring one theme relating to drag and art. We have Linton here with us. Today on the show, we'll dive deep into the subject of music. Grab your brushes because it's time to spill some tin. And once again, it's me, Mick Spikey, here on Canvases and Queens. Bing bang bong, sing sang song, it's Linton!
Hey, yeah, you're right.
Hi, Linton. How are
How you
you?
doing? I'm all right, thanks, Jason. How are you?
I'm good. I know I mentioned this earlier, but I have to reiterate that I'm very nervous because of two reasons. First one is that I think I'm talking about a subject that I'm not very familiar with. And then second, I know you're a veteran podcaster.
That's right. Yeah, I work for BBC. But do you know what? This is a unique podcast, and you'll make it your own. So I wouldn't worry about it. I talk about classical music, so this is not my podcasting about drag queens. Is not my area of expertise. That's yours. So
Okay, well, if I make any mistakes, yeah, feel free to just flag and then, yeah, thumbs down or thumbs up if I'm.
it's all thumbs up so far. It's all top toots.
Okay, thank you. Let's keep it that way. Okay, well, thank you for joining me, and I know you're very busy, especially this time of the year. So let's just get started, shall we?
Let's dive in. Yeah, let's go.
Okay, so we'll start the show in Act 1, and this is the part of the show where we take a close look at some of your work.
Okay.
And Linton, I want to start with the very first Drag Race art that you did. I think it's the artwork of Cheddar Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah, for those just listening at home, maybe you can start with a physical description of the piece and then maybe tell us more about the artwork itself.
It wasn't drag race art, but it was drag queen art. So Cheddar Gorgeous, Michael, his name is. His cousin is a very good friend of mine. He's a violinist. I'm a classical musician, and I met Michael through Simon, his cousin, the violinist. Sorry, the dog's just come. You can't see him, but he's right here. He's very nosy. Well, we went on a few nights out with him as Michael, and then I went on a few nights out with where he happened to be hosting at certain places in Manchester as Cheddar Gorgeous. One thing I've got to say about Cheddar Gorgeous is Cheddar was doing high drag, like really high drag, long before it was kind of happening on Drag Race, I think, as well. Oh, look, he's going to come and sit on my lap now. There we go. He was doing incredible concepts done exceptionally well. And I remember talking to him. And again, this was long before the question of gender binary came into the public. He always talked about he went to the gym to get quite buff because he wanted his drag to be a dichotomy of femininity on a very masculine body. That's what drag was all about for him. And yes, which I always just thought was such an incredible concept and a great way to challenge this idea of the gender binary by using drag.
Oh, sorry, can you remind me when was this?
So this was probably 2009, 2010, maybe. Yeah, I mean, Drag Race had started, and there's another story about how I got into Drag Race as well, which I'll come back to later. And I loved Michael's drag, and so I drew this picture, which is Michael topless, so masculine, very masculine body, but covered in these jewels around his neck and with a unicorn horn, black lipstick, almost looking fairy-like, definitely fairy tale-like. And that was always what Michael, and still is what Cheddar Gorgeous, sorry, is all about, is this dichotomy of masculinity and femininity and finding this place where neither and both can exist at the same time. So yeah, that was my first drag drawing, but even that I think was before I got into RuPaul's Drag Race.
That's so interesting. What I can tell from this image, it's not only a blend between the masculine and feminine, but it's also a little bit outer worldly as well.
Mm,
Is it fair to say that Cheddar Gorgeous was your introduction into drag race art as well?
no, No, Cheddar Gorgeous was just the first time I drew on drag as inspiration for my art. So I did quite a lot of other stuff before that, and I need something a bit fantastical, a bit fantasy, and Cheddar's whole aesthetic was that. I have a funny history with RuPaul's Drag Race in particular.
Okay, do tell.
Well, it's not. It's I say funny story. It's not funny at all, but it's just
Okay.
interesting considering how much I love it now and how immersed I am in drag race culture, and also what I think it's done for drag and trans community in terms of social activism. I'm fully on board with it. But what's interesting is I remember going to watch season 5, which or season 4 maybe, Sharon Needles season
Four.
4, yes, season 4. I remember going to watch that 2 or 3 times, but I just couldn't watch it. I just couldn't get on board with this idea of men dressing up as women. And that is
Uh,
all to do with my own internalized homophobia, this side of myself, my own femininity that
yeah.
I couldn't acknowledge, I couldn't accept about myself. I phrased it like I couldn't watch men dressing up as women. It wasn't that. I couldn't watch men being overtly effeminate because that made me feel uncomfortable about my own femininity.
Yeah, because we are on different parts of the world, so I cannot assume that the gay experience is universal. But I kind of suspect that there's something to do with our generation, millennial gays. I think we were being picked on being a bit more feminine, so we had to butch it up to present ourselves outside to be more masculine. And I'm not so sure.
Mhm.
Maybe that was my reason.
No, absolutely, I agree. And here in the UK as well, I grew up in the era of Margaret Thatcher, who introduced something called, I think it was Section 23 or something like that. Anyway, what that meant is that no person in a professional position, teaching position, could talk to children about homosexuality. So it was something that we were made to, first of all, repress about ourselves. So, and the damage that has done, it's not just that you can't talk about homosexuality, you have to repress anything that's connected with homosexuality. So, in this case, for me, it was femininity. And any time that anybody talked about my masculinity, I wore that as a badge of honor. So that was where the dissonance came for me with Drag Race initially. And the funny thing is, I don't know what changed, but it wasn't long after that I suddenly found myself completely like so engaged by it. And I remember I went back and watched season 6 that I watched fully first, then 5, then 4. I didn't watch 1 for a long, long time, and I don't know what changed, whether it was something about me or whatever, or I just give this program a chance. I'm in a place where I love the feminine side of myself, and I love that who I am exists on a spectrum of masculinity and femininity and all of that. And Drag Race has massively helped that. But I don't know what changed anyway in that time, and it wasn't a long time, but that was where my introduction to drag and Drag Race as a platform came.
Interesting. I had a similar trajectory as well.
And what did you think of it at first? Like, did you enjoy it at first?
I watched it mainly because I wouldn't say peer pressure. I watched it mainly because I felt left out. And similar to you, I reintroduced myself to the franchise with season 6 and then watch backwards. So maybe there's something about season 6. I don't know. Yeah, I think Bianca Del Rio should win an award for dragging people back into the show. I don't know.
With season 6 for me, it was Bianca. She was comedy, and like really good comedy is quite rare. And it was at a time as well, I think, when because it wasn't famous, there was something still quite authentic about it. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think this is what needs to happen these days in order for a show to continue as long as RuPaul's Drag Race has. But um, like a lot of those drag queens didn't come out of RuPaul's Drag Race from the early seasons thinking they were going to be global superstars. Whereas I think a lot of drag queens go in now hoping that they are going to come out global superstars.
You can tell the earlier seasons, they're not as filtered, so it's more candid. And
Yeah,
I became very hooked with Drag Race UK because it had that earlier season vibe to it.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's what was there in the earlier seasons. I think I became invested in these people, and I guess as well, shamelessly came invested in the drama, and then by
Yeah.
proxy became invested in this idea of runway because I'm not fashion wasn't like a big thing for me. I'm not interested. I wasn't initially interested in the fashion of it all, and it's kind of like when you watch the Olympics and suddenly you become an expert on diving or something like that. It's like because I was watching Drag Race, became suddenly invested in the fashions that they were wearing, and
I was gonna call you out because I think you dress really well, and I think that's such bullshit that you don't care about fashion. But okay, sorry.
no, I didn't. I do now. Like I've always cared about how I look, but
Uh-huh.
like I was never interested in fashion magazines. I just
Mhm.
wanted to look good. But once you start watching RuPaul's Drag Race, you suddenly become an expert on what they're wearing as they're walking down the runway, and you're like, oh well, look at the hem on this and this and that. You know what I mean?
I think more so as drag race artists, we also have to spend a lot of time looking at an
Mm.
image to get something out. So I think through that process, we tend to pick it out a little better.
As an artist as well, you start to examine what about their look will fit with my style. It was like the impetus, the first impetus for me to draw Cheddar Gorgeous was something about what Cheddar was doing was what I wanted to get out onto the page. You're absolutely right. We're looking at it with through an artist lens and saying, what about this look can I interpret into my style?
It's like you're saying Cheddar Gorgeous at the time was a muse that connected with something inside you that you wanted to express, and you expressed it through representing Cheddar Gorgeous on a tablet.
Yeah, because it's not like look at some of your work, and some of it is like beautiful. And actually, one of the pictures I sent you was our tribute to Chichi, because that was one of my favorite things that I've ever done, but and been part of. We've ever done, but yours was so beautiful,
Oh,
and
thank you.
you took that look and then you made it your own. So it was what we see with Drag Race fan art is uh, something expressive and artistic through our own eyes of how we see the world. That's the beauty of fan art, because it can be whimsical and it can be funny, but it also can be a real lens into how we as illustrators and artists see drag, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you for that. I really appreciate it. That doesn't happen always, but of course, when the stars align, then those type of beautiful pieces will happen. But yes, I think we all have you to thank as well for making that happen.
I'll just explain for anybody who's listening who's not watching. We did this piece of fan art when Chichi Devane passed away. We all made our own interpretation of a look by Chichi Devane, and then it became part of a bigger collage. Why I love that is because it's just what we were talking about. It's Chichi Devane in all her guises through each of our individual artistic lens. And what is so beautiful about that is the interpretations are so broad, from my kind of, I guess, almost Disney-esque, right the way through to Ed's, um,
Cubis.
yeah, Cubist. Yeah. In that one composition, you're seeing Chi Devane through so many people's eyes, and that's like, I mean, that's just, it's love.
I want to also briefly talk about your collection of work, because what I noticed is that you like to capture movement in time. So it looks like they're almost, I don't know.
I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah,
Yeah. Is that conscious?
yeah. One of my favorite books, which I'll say for the sake of the podcast, but I'll show you if you're watching,
Okay.
is
Yes.
this book called Drawn to Life by Walt Stanchfield, who was a Disney animator. That book for me was a godsend because this guy, Walt Stanchfield, not only did he talk about his craft, which was animation, but he talks about being an artist in such a way. And obviously, I'm a musician, that's my main job. But he talks about being an artist in such a way that a lot of the advice he gives transcends his discipline and really talks to me as an artist, as a musician, and as an illustrator. And anyway, that book explores gesture and how to capture gesture. And I love my pictures to look as if it's a still from a cartoon, perhaps, and you could see how exaggerated the pose is, and you can get from a pose you can get a bit of personality, and I guess that's attitude and personality in a still.
Yeah, that's 100% what I thought. It has this sense of like you're looking at a single cell of an animation and you could easily tell where they were coming from and where they're going or what they're expressing at the time. And I love that so much about your art in particular. So yeah, I think Disney-esque is not sufficient to describe your work.
Well, I'll jump in there because we say Disney-esque as if it's a negative thing. There's a really famous ballet star called Misty Copeland, and the quote she says is something like, "Everybody thinks it's cute till they see what you actually have to go through to be able to be cute." In the same way, like we take, I think, Disney-esque style art for granted. If you think my work can capture movement, some of these people and their gestures and how they do it so naturally, there is a real craft to it. Like I could only hope to God one day that I can aspire to be like they are. Like their skill is just unreal.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think the outcome might look very similar, but the thought process is very
Yeah,
important.
yeah, precisely. All of that kind of stuff. So like, there's so much formula in there, and God, if only I had half the skill of some of these people, you know.
Yes, you're right. So I do agree. I think for those who might view Disney as a negative connotation, I might have used that earlier, it suggests that it's just very surface level. And yeah, you have to know a lot of other things for you to have the outcome like this. Yeah,
Yeah, sure.
100% agree. Yeah. So we come to Act 2, and this is the part of the show where we'll dive deeper into a specific theme relating to art and drag. And today we are talking about music.
Woohoo.
Yeah, okay. Linton, I don't know many professional musician and I don't know a lot of professional musician that draws so well as well. So you are like the perfect mix between the two. And full disclosure, my musical knowledge is very minimal, so I will ask you questions as if I'm like a dummy asking all these things, all right? So, since we're on the topic of drag earlier, maybe I'll start with what are your thoughts on drag queens music, and do you have any favorites so far?
Yeah, it's just fun, isn't it? Like elements of drag have become more serious, but one of the things we want to talk about in a little bit is the difference between US and UK drag. We'll go into this more later, but UK drag is about satire, and I think drag music is an extension of that. It's an extension of satire. So, very often the lyrics are things that are taboo because of society, or things that we just don't talk about, or things that are just very practical that don't get talked about very much. So I love drag. I love drag music as well, and it's all about empowerment, isn't it? And acceptance. So that it's fun.
Yeah,
Like it's the most fun genre of music. Like you can guarantee whatever drag artist you're listening to, there's going to be some kind of fun message in there.
as a classical musician, is it a taboo to like pop music or stupid music? I guess, for lack of better term, entertaining music.
No, of course not. Like the thing about music is, and this is one thing I'm really passionate about with classical music. Because classical music is seen as this genre that is highbrow, quite stuffy, for elite people. But for me, the whole point of music is it's there to entertain. So it doesn't matter what music you like, whether it's heavy metal or pop or dance or jazz or country or classical or drag queen music, which crosses all those genres. The whole point is like music's there to entertain. It's just vibrations of the air. So for me, like drag music is just another type of music that I love. In fact, I had it on in the gym this morning.
Do you feel like you have to reconcile the two? Do you have a hat on for, okay, this is classical music Linton, and then I am my guilty pleasure music Linton? Do you have to switch on and off between the two?
Not at all. No, it's literally just what I'm feeling at the time. So, like, I was in the gym this morning. I thought I want something familiar, and I want something with a nice melody that I can listen to. I'm surrounded by classical music all the time, like constantly. So sometimes I actually just need a relief from that as well. Like classical music can be quite academic, and sometimes, especially when you're playing it as well, takes an awful lot of concentration. So sometimes you do just want something that you can just listen to and have a laugh and switch off. Sometimes you want something that you can belt out to or sing along to. I don't have to change my mind. My mind changes before I pick the music.
I don't know a lot of artists that are very good at two different disciplines of art. So, how do you feel between your digital art and your music? Do they influence each other?
Yeah, I mean, so music is my job. There is a very different impetus for me to make music than there is for me to make art. Music I do because I have to. I want to, don't get me wrong, but I do it because it pays my bills. So often when I'm practicing for the next thing and it has to be right. Whereas art very often happens because I want to do it. That's how music used to be for me before took it up as a profession. So I was doing a lot of commissions at one point as well, and for the last maybe year and a half, especially since I've been doing a lot more broadcasting with BBC, I haven't really taken on that many commissions because I've wanted to do art only for me and only when I want to do it as well, which has actually meant that timing wise and also my own creativity, I haven't done as much art as I wanted to. But the other thing that comes into all of that is so a massive part of my life is social activism, and all the art that I do is the place where my social activism meets. So through my music in advocacy and my work with the Equalities Committee at the Musicians Union, and also through my art. So the most recent thing that's on my Instagram was during Black History Month, and it was a coalesce of all my disciplines where I brought to the fore over 30 black and ethnically diverse composers, drew pictures of them, put together playlists. So it's a place where all of these things that are important to me, I can express that through my artistic outputs.
So, based on what I understood from our earlier conversation, you were drawing much longer than you were playing music. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah.
So, how do you decide that that's where you want to transition, given that you were working on drawing for much longer?
Very simply, so I'd always drawn. I've got six brothers and sisters, big family. Drawing was something that I did to and still do now as a bit of a meditation to get away from everything. And I did when I did my A levels. I did art and I did music and I also did biology and maths. And the reason I chose music is because music was the only thing that I did where I thought I could do this every single day and never get bored of it. I mean, even back then, I didn't know much about careers in music. It just so happened that I, by chance, ended up going to a summer school one year at a music college, and somebody was like, you can do this as a profession. But I had no idea you could be a professional artist and any of that. Like, I didn't know any of those pathways. So even if I did, I don't think I would have made a different choice because drawing was something that always had to stay as my hobby. And music was something I was so passionate about that I thought I want to make a living out of it. So
Yeah, like I said, it's very rare to see someone pursuing music professionally. Yeah, and I myself am quite protective over drawing as well. So whenever there's a commission that comes in, I'm quite selective of what I pick
yeah,
to do.
absolutely, yeah. It has to remain a hobby for me. Like there was a point maybe 2 years ago, maybe a little bit more, where I was just taking on so many commissions. I was just like, I want to draw what I
Yeah.
want to draw, you know.
Anyway, we'll go back to one of the thing we briefly touched on earlier, the difference between the UK and the US. So you mentioned the UK one is more satire. Is that what you notice in just drag music, or is that what you notice in music in general?
Well, this is all conjecture.
Yeah,
The difference for me, and I think this difference translates to music as well, and the types of musical challenges that have happened in US and UK. So when US drag was out, and I was watching Drag Race, it's very much about there's this idea of pageantry and runway and aesthetics, which I think, and somebody's going to come in and tell me I'm completely wrong here, but that wasn't really in the UK scene for a long time. Like, whereas you've got this idea of pageantry and beauty and femininity and feminine illusion in American drag, in the UK, I feel like it was less about this feminine illusion and more about taking the piss out of the patriarchal idea of femininity. And in the UK, what that became was like the image of a bawdry, tawdry, middle-aged woman, big boobs, big bosom, big hair. You know, the rough mum who's done herself up for the night, got her nails on, got too much makeup on. That's what it became about for me when I went to see a lot of drag queens, and it was all about the comedy. Like there was no drag queen was there to necessarily look extremely beautiful. It was there to to entirely be a character and to take the piss out of this idea, this patriarchal idea of femininity and what feminine should be. That's what my hypothesis about the difference. That's changed now. I think we've, as with a lot of things, Americanisms have come into the UK drag, and this idea of the pageant is a very American idea. Like pageants don't really exist or happen in the UK. I mean, outside of drag. But yeah, that's transferred to the music as well. So we look at like the kind of challenges, and we've got this that the idea of a girl band is ingrained in the UK. And even if you look back to the 90s, we've got girl bands like All Saints, Spice Girls, the Saturdays, all of those who are, you know, there's a real culture for that kind of thing in the UK. Whereas your girl bands from the US are a little bit more R&B, you know, like from Destiny's Child to TLC to that kind of thing. Like they serve a kind of different purpose and they make a different kind of music. And I think that's what the difference between US and UK music, drag music is that it harkens back to those more of those kind of influences, if that makes sense.
I'm just throwing words out there. I'm just speculating if it's the difference between like the American individualism culture versus the UK collectivist ideas.
Yeah, possibly. But I also think what is a massive influence as well is, and this predates me, so again, it's a lot of conjecture, but where drag came from. So for the US, drag, from what I understand, grew out of ballroom culture. We didn't have ballroom culture in the same way over here. So drag was a transplant into the UK, and as I said, that became a reflection of men's patriarchal view. It became a piss take of men's and patriarchal views of women in society. But then, and that is massively ingrained as well in black culture in America. I mean, this is a bit of a specialist subject of mine in classical music, but how the influence of African American and the various African American cultures have affected music. You know, there was a huge black population in the ballroom scene. And so music to them and the music that they'll have been listening to compared to the drag queens that we had over here at the same time, which probably weren't as many, like drag was serving a different purpose in the same way that music was serving a different purpose in each country at that time. But that's not to say that each doesn't have wider appeal or global appeal.
The moment you said that, it suddenly made me want to just pay a little bit more attention, especially when music challenge comes up.
I think a big thing as well is the writer of the music as well. So their briefs will be very different. You know, so they'll say, write a piece of music for the opening of season 12 that sounds like it's from Chicago, or that it sounds like a rap that done by Nicki Minaj. Whereas they'll say over here, write a piece of music that sounds like it could be used in Eurovision, or write a piece of music that sounds like a piece of pop music from the late 90s or something like that. So the brief as well is entirely different for the music.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. It's like you have
Yeah.
to double think a little bit.
What I'll say is, again, that brief is different. So, you know, Eurovision is it's a British institution and it's a European institution that doesn't happen in America. So if you're going to draw upon Eurovision music as an inspiration, then you have to really understand not only the music, but what role Eurovision as a competition and Eurovision music plays within British culture. Um, like, I'm not saying that British or American couldn't do one or the other, but it's entwined in culture as well. I think.
I think part of it is now with social media, we're all a little bit more global as well. So you can have a lot of I wouldn't say that you can successfully, but you can tap into certain understanding of what a culture might be, especially popular culture. I think the reason
Yeah.
why it's so popular is that it can appeal to a mass audience. Okay, wait, I'm gonna sound so stupid.
No, you're absolutely no, you're right. It's global appeal. It still has to have that global appeal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why the Spice Girls had global fame. That's why so many British artists, American artists achieve global fame because it has that global appeal. And I think Drag Race tries to reflect the essence of that in their drag music.
Yeah. Do you feel the UK season is slowly shifting into that as well?
It's funny because you talked about authenticity in season one of UK Drag Race, and I don't know whether it's because I am a bitter old man, but I watched that and I did feel a little bit like these guys are quite aware that they're on telly in a way that, like, I think for the first couple of seasons of Drag Race US, like they knew that some people would see it, but they weren't thinking they're filming this and it's going to be a global sensation. I think it was slightly
Yeah.
different by the time we'd
Yeah.
reached the
I
UK.
think yes. No, it's not because you're bitter or old. Drag was never a big part of my life except on TV. So that's the only way I consumed for a very long time. It's only until when I moved around a lot that I managed to watch a drag show. So yeah, me thinking the UK season is authentic, I think is also based on the fact that I'm understanding from just the comparing the TV shows.
Yeah, I think the thing is as well, because one thing that I noticed as well is we in the UK we didn't have a lot of very young drag queens. So a lot of the drag queens, especially in the early 2000s when I was at uni and going to bars and stuff, usually they were older men, so late 30s, early 40s and upwards, who would be drag queens. I hadn't really ever seen younger drag queens. I hadn't seen glamorous drag queens in the pubs and clubs in the UK. And I think that started to happen once RuPaul's Drag Race became more of a global franchise. Then it became seen as a profession, whereas it wasn't. It was just something that people would do on a weekend. And the type of drag queens that we were exposed to growing up, or that I was exposed to, was the likes of Lily Savage, who was, this incredible TV personality, sharpest wit you'll ever see, comebacks in a whip of a second. But it was the older male dressed up as the tawdry housewife, and it was all about comedy. That's the type of drag queens that we were exposed to in the UK. And so seeing a lot of these younger queens on season one of UK's RuPaul UK, like I was like, this is something I wouldn't have seen 10 years ago in the clubs and pubs.
Do you see like there's now a larger community, or you feel like there's a switch almost?
So where I lived, Manchester, there was a place called the Gay Village. It was famous in the UK. It's where the original Queer as Folk was set. Manchester was a place where a lot of
Oh,
young gay men would go before there were things like Grinder and Scruff and stuff like that. And I don't go to those kind of places anymore. Not because I'm a miserable old queen. I just like I don't have the time like I did when I was a student to be going out to those places. But the question was, do we see more of that now?
I
I
know.
think I think drag now is a profession, whereas I don't think it was. It was something that people did additionally here in the UK on a weekend or whenever they did it. When they were doing drag bingo or stuff like that. But drag itself as well, the idea of drag has become so mainstream and such a form of entertainment that you can make a living out of it. So that's the other thing that RuPaul has done, has propelled, which I think was always RuPaul's intention. I've heard him talk about it on the show, which is to give queens a platform and to propel them to stardom, and also be able to make a living out of being a drag queen. It was rarer, much rarer that it would happen. Going back 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's like a double-edged sword. While you have all the benefits that comes with popularity, there's some downsides as well, I think.
Yeah, sure.
I thought maybe to broaden up the topic a little bit, maybe you might give an advice to someone who might struggle to juggle between having multiple creative outlets.
That's an interesting question because I don't have the time to juggle the two at the moment. Um, it is we one of the things that we talk about on our little art queens thread that we have on Instagram that you and I are in, this group of artists, is, I love that thread because it is a very supportive thread where often one person will dip in and say, "Oh, I'm having a creative block," and people will just drop in all of this advice about shit that they do to get through it and stuff like that. Um, for me, it's not always about time. Even it's about having the inspiration to do what I need to do. Like, so my instrument is sat behind me in a case, and I haven't touched it this week because I just needed some time away from it. Often it's not about juggling; it's finding the inspiration to do what you need to do, and often to get past that first hurdle takes willpower more than anything else. Often inspiration comes once you've sat down already and got the pen in your hand, and make yourself just do it initially, and then more often than not, the creativity flows out of that. So I think it's less about time and more about the willpower to sit down and do whatever it is you need to do. Um, and then outside of that, if you've got multiple creative outlets, it's time management.
Yeah, I think finding a community is important as well, like our little chat group.
Yeah, like that little chat group is brilliant. It's great because we give each other validation, and you'll get loads of support back. That's really great. But also the thing that unites us is like the love of drag queens. So you can sit there, and whilst we'll talk about art as well, we'll be shady and say, "Did you see such and such's outfit?" or stuff like that. So it's, yeah, exactly what
Yeah.
you said. Like-minded.
I'm there for the drama. I'm there for the messiness. So
Yeah, it's all of that.
I'm
It's all
there
of
for
that.
all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, but that's what makes it
Yeah,
all
that's
great,
all
isn't
that.
it?
Yeah.
That's what's fantastic.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I have to ask, what do you usually listen to when you draw?
Right. It completely depends. What I need when I draw is, and I was thinking about this before. So if you're sat on something uncomfortable, you are very aware that it's uncomfortable the whole time. Whereas if you sat on a reasonably comfortable couch, you don't know it. Like, it's the kind, which is, this is an awful analogy, but this is how I was thinking about it. It's the same with me. I need music on that is brilliant, and that can be any type of music, but that won't pull me away from what I'm doing. Because when I'm drawing, I said this before, I'm in a slightly meditative state, so I need something that can just go on in the background, which won't pull me out of what I'm doing. Because if like when I'm sat on the hard floor, if I'm so drawn to what's going on in the music, I can't concentrate on what I'm doing. So what I need is comfortable music, and that can be anything from like binaural beats to pieces of classical music to drag music that's familiar that won't pull me out of my zone when I'm drawing. So it could be any number of things as long as it doesn't take me away from what I'm doing.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I guess given being a musician, you're very sensitive to how music influence your mood and thinking as well. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So like for some people, like I have to write a lot of scripts for my broadcasting stuff. I have to write in silence. I have to write in complete silence. I cannot write with music on, even if even if it doesn't have words, because it pulls me out of my concentration. And especially not anything with lyrics. I can't, while I'm trying to write, listen to anything with lyrics. But when I'm drawing, as long as the music won't pull me out of what I'm drawing, it's fine.
Well, Linton, I feel like we just scraped the surface of this, and I feel like we're already almost at the end of the show. So hopefully, if I pray hard enough, maybe we'll come back again in the future, and maybe we'll continue this, or maybe we'll talk about something else.
I would be delighted. It would be my pleasure.
Okay, and because I don't want to take too much of your time, I think maybe it's time to go into Act 3. Is that alright?
Absolutely.
So in Act 3, I'm just gonna ask you some random questions. So feel free to answer however you like. And
Excellent.
yeah, it's gonna be a surprise, hopefully.
Okay, quick fire
Are you
round.
ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, on the topic of music, what is your go-to karaoke song? And
It
do you
would
have a signature move that goes with it?
I don't have a move, but it would have to be Journey, Don't Stop Believing.
Ooh. Okay, well, I have to ask now. Are you excellent singer?
I mean, I can belt out a tune, but I'm
Oh.
certainly not excellent. Certainly not excellent.
Okay, well, I won't put you on the spot, but if you feel like singing a tune, just feel free to sing anytime.
I'm not gonna. I'm well.
I won't make.
Maybe next time.
Okay,
Maybe.
question number two, and I think that will be it. If you have an animal as a sidekick, what would it be and why?
Okay, if it wasn't Biscuit who's snoring his head off behind me, I think I would choose. I had an animal as a sidekick. I think I would choose. I would choose a blue whale. I find whales absolutely. I'm a massive geek, and I don't sleep very well. And so when I don't sleep, I end up jumping onto the internet and researching all sorts of weird things. And whale evolution is something that's just fascinated me. So I would choose the largest animal that's ever lived, the blue whale.
Wow, there's so much to unpack there, but I'm very fascinated, and very yeah, and highly
Save
specific.
that for my therapist.
Interesting. I wonder if something to do with the whale sounds and the whistling
Maybe,
and stuff.
maybe.
Okay, I love that. I think that's an excellent
What would
answer.
you choose, Jason? What would your animal sidekick be?
Okay, I have this weird fascination with raccoons. I find them so adorable, and I've never seen one in person until very recently. I don't know. I
Okay.
just imagine them being really good sidekick because they have the mask on and all those things. Yes, I know. In real life, they're quite terrifying.
Yeah, they're quite vicious, aren't they? I'm going to wait for the artwork of Jason and his raccoon.
Okay, yeah. I'll do that.
I'll do the same. I'll do a drawing of me and my sidekick too.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, that should be a runway theme on Drag Race as well. Animal sidekick realness. Okay. Well, anyway, thank you, Linton. I really didn't expect anything because I knew so little about music in general. But you were so insightful, and I feel like I learned so much.
It's been a pleasure. You're going to get all these comments now with people being like, "That's a load of bullshit. He's talking rubbish." But there you go. I did say a lot of that was conjecture, so be kind.
Yeah. If you want to leave a comment, leave a nice one.
Yeah, and if you want to come for me in my DM.
Do not cite this podcast on your thesis. Please do a proper research. Jeez, do we need to teach these kids everything?
Yeah,
Okay, well, thank you all for listening to Canvases and Queens. Please subscribe and never miss another episode. Please sound off in the comments and tell us who you want to see or what other topics you want us to discuss on this channel in the future. Like this video if you enjoyed any part of this conversation. Share this with a friend as well. You can also follow this show on Canvases X Queens on Instagram. And Linton, where can people find you?
they can find me at Linstagram, which is my personal Instagram, or at Insta_Sketcher. Uh, so both are linked to each other.
Oh wait, do I know that you have a personal one?
Yeah, you
Maybe I
follow my
do.
personal Instagram.
Okay, sorry. I know one. Sorry, I know you have one on Biscuit.
Oh, and then there's Biscuits,
Anyway.
which is packet of biscuits. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you can follow Biscuit. So I'll put all
Spelled
the
Biscuit.
links in the description box somewhere. Okay. Join me again in the next episode, and until then, keep it artsy and stay fartsy. Bye.
Ta-ra. Let me show you. Hold on.
Oh, okay. I want to try remember name. Cookie?
That's Biscuit, but
Biscuit.
close enough.
Okay,
Close enough.
sorry.